Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Nancy Boys. Today I'll be reviewing two films in a bit of a roundup because I've done two screenings this weekend and I'm not doing two separate videos for them, so you'll have to live with it. But yeah, this weekend I've seen Longlegs and I've seen In a Violent Nature, and I'm just back from seeing that movie. I would say these two films have pretty much been on a bit of a massive hype train for the last few months. Longlegs in particular has been called the scariest film of the decade and one of the best films of the year. In a Violent Nature, I guess less praise, but definitely kind of a lot of online chat about the kind of creativity behind it. I definitely have some thoughts, so let's kick off with Longlegs. Longlegs is directed by Perkins and stars Micah Monroe and Nicolas Cage. And just a quick synopsis, FBI agent Lee Harker is assigned to an unsolved serial killer case that takes an unexpected turn, revealing evidence of the occult. Harker discovers a personal connection to the killer and must stop him before he strikes again. Now, I will be very honest on Longlegs. I found this such a frustrating experience, and for many reasons why. I think it's worth giving a bit of context. I went and saw a midnight screening of Longlegs on Friday night. And unexpectedly for me, I started nodding off. I guess there's a reason for that. So I really, really liked the first kind of two parts of this film. And I say that on purpose because the film is broken up quite oddly into three parts. And I thought those first two parts were beautifully shot. There was something really sinister and spooky about the atmosphere that's built up. The performances were awesome. I loved Micah Monroe. I've loved her since The Guest. I love her in It Follows. I think she's one of those actresses that makes a film just more watchable by her presence. I think she's awesome. I'm not a huge Nicolas Cage fan, but I'd heard a lot about the performance, and I agree. I think he did a good job in bringing something new and quite sinister as a kind of horror property that we hadn't really seen before. So I really like it, and I remember I saw a few negative reviews of Longlegs, and I remember thinking in that first sort of hour or so, like, I don't understand. This is so good. It's really, really creepy. The way that it builds its kind of like sense of foreboding and its atmosphere is great. And I sort of settled in for a good time around a kind of very procedural detective story about a serial killer. In my view, the third act, this part 3, absolutely brought the whole thing tumbling back down. I've seen another Perkins film, which is The Black Coat's Daughter, and I had a similar feeling with that again started really strong, but just didn't know how to sustain the energy. And I guess The Black Coat's Daughter was more about just pacing. For me, this film just, I don't know what it was doing in terms of plot, but I absolutely hated the denouement and the kind of the plot twist. It ends with this kind of big exposition dump about what's been going on in the film. And to be honest, I haven't seen a cheesy plot like that since Sylvester McCoy era Doctor Who in the 1980s. It was just the biggest swerve from what was quite a smart film. So yeah, I don't really like films that mix genres. So for me, this had been billed as a bit of a Silence of the Lambs kind of homage to Silence of the Lambs. It then completely switches into this strange, occultish, religious horror, which just, personally, that's just not my thing at all. And it made it just even more frustrating that it was the closing part of what had been a really interesting and kind of intriguing film to that point. I was just kind of gutted. And I remember I nodded off in the cinema for about a minute because there was a point in the film where it actually just started to drag a little bit. And I started to think, did I miss something? Because when the film ended, I just thought, that can't be it. I must have, maybe I fell asleep at a pivotal moment, and maybe I slept longer than I thought it was 10 seconds. I'm thinking, maybe did I sleep for 5 minutes? Did I miss something really big? And when I got home, invariably, and looked at the Wikipedia synopsis, I hadn't really missed anything. The ending was what it was. I found it so unsatisfying and really frustrating because I thought there was a nugget of a good movie here, and it was kind of thrown away. And I would love to have known what this film would have been like if Perkins had been allowed to direct as he saw fit, but maybe had just turned that script writing to someone else. Biggest frustration for me was there was a lot of really good stuff set up in the first half of the film that then kind of just doesn't really go anywhere. So there's just a lot of odds and ends that you think, well, okay, well, that was kind of pointless. I didn't really get it. There's this whole thing about, the main character being psychic, which for my mind just doesn't really add a lot to the film. There's this whole thing about her decoding the letters that this killer has been leaving. and then she solves those in probably the first 20 minutes of the film, and then it makes no difference to the rest of the movie that she's done that. So yeah, it pains me to say it, and I'm not the only one. This film has definitely divided people, and a friend of mine who I messaged to say I hated it was adamant that I was wrong, and that's fine because it's films are for everyone, and we all enjoy different things. But this absolutely fell apart for me in part 3, and such a shame because I think that will bear on my score. I think if it had ended well, this would have been a good 8 or 9 based on that first hour, but the ending just dragged it down to a 6. So I'm really sad. I thought Longlegs was going to be kind of one of the best ones of the year. The marketing campaign was absolutely amazing. It made it just look like it was going to be something really, really special. And again, that plot was just, it was so B-movie. It was so kind of throwaway. And yeah, I mean, I would have expected to see, again, without giving into the spoilers, that kind of plot would have suited like a half an hour Twilight Zone special. Like it was just kind of naff. So there you go. Lots to like about it, and if you don't mind the ending, you might kind of make it through. But yeah, it's a 6 for me. We then move on to In a Violent Nature, which was directed by Chris Nash. As a synopsis, when a group of teens take a locket from a collapsed fire tower in the woods, they unwittingly resurrect the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime. The undead killer soon embarks on a bloody rampage to retrieve the stolen locket, methodically slaughtering anyone who gets in the way. And I guess what's missing from that synopsis, because I mean that the plot of this film is like any kind of Friday the 13th type movie, give or take the plot with the kind of the locket that goes missing. The conceit with this film is that you sort of see it, albeit it's a bit of a cheat because it's not always from the perspective of the killer. So you kind of follow him as the locket gets stolen. You sort of see him resurrect himself, and then you see him kind of plod through this sort of forest killing people. It is a bit of a cheat, as I said, because it doesn't always follow him. Sometimes it cuts away. This is a difficult one. I don't know that I'd recommend this to anyone who's anything but a major horror fan. Obviously, I'm a massive horror enthusiast, and I'm a fussy bastard because of it. But it's a gimmick, and it's a gimmick that I think you'll enjoy if you kind of know the tropes of your typical slasher movies. But it really is, frankly, quite dull. Like between the kills, you kind of realise that sort of obnoxious Friday the 13th plotting, you kind of need it. You kind of need something to kind of get from kill to kill to kind of keep things moving along. With this, there is just a lot of walking around the forest. A lot of the time you just kind of want to get him to get to the point. And what I will say, and this is probably where the joy of the film is, because it is extremely gory. I mean, the kills are really good. I would say this is why you would go and see this film. There's the yoga kill, which is pretty phenomenal. I'm not quite sure of the physics of it, whether that would play out as it does in real life. But the kills make it watchable to that extent. You're kind of waiting for him to get to the next one. It's just a bit of a slog, I would say, to get to each one kind of with that in between. There's some stylish stuff. I think that it is an indie movie, and there's some creativity behind it, which I did really appreciate. Some of the sort of the look and the kind of the way the film's put together is quite commendable. It's definitely not a cheap throwaway film. It just kind of begs the question, like, who's this for? What I found weird as well is part of me was thinking, is this supposed to be a pastiche? Is this supposed to be taking the piss out of the conventions of slasher movies? But then some of the characters just make some of the same stupid decisions that you would get in a typical film. So I don't know if that means that they did take it as a pastiche or they didn't. I just felt like if this film had been smarter and the characters had been smarter than your average slasher movie cast, it probably would have added to it. But again, the characters don't act any different to your usual kind of like bags of meat in a Friday the 13th film. They do very stupid things. There's a sequence near the end where 3 characters are facing off against the killer, and the way he gets the upper hand is just through sheer incompetence on their part. The film also ends very strangely. There's a very long monologue where you're kind of expecting something to happen and it doesn't. And I guess if you think about it, there's maybe some intellect behind that. I took from that to mean that this killer was never there to just kill people. It was never about gratuitously murdering people. It was to get back the locket. So as soon as he gets back the locket, everything's fixed. So you don't get that kind of like final jump scare that you would expect in a slasher movie. But the problem is you've got 10, 15 minutes left at the end of the film after the final kill where you're kind of like, well, what's going to happen now? And I get it, it's brave. It's kind of an interesting way of ending a slasher movie. But I don't know. I think as a horror enthusiast, I'm happy to sit through this and kind of take it for what it's worth. But for a regular viewer, this is kind of inaccessible. And I'd be unsure what anyone else would get out of it, unless you're really into gore. It is one of those films where the kills are what count. You don't really need to see the padding in between. And ultimately it makes it, I don't know, kind of a slog to get through. But interesting, it's nice to see something different. It just wasn't particularly exciting. So again, this is a 6. And this really pains me because these two films, I've been kind of looking forward to these for a long time. And I was really hoping that it would break the cycle of what's been quite an average year so far. But anyway, check them out for yourself. Let me know what you thought. What I would love to know is favourite kills in A Violent Nature. That would be great because there were a lot of them. I would also love to know, for the people that found Longlegs scary, I don't mean this question facetiously, but I would just love to know what it was because I just didn't get scared from it. I found it slightly uncomfortable and slightly unnerving, but it didn't scare me. So this thing about it being the scariest film of the decade, I'm just lost, and it would be great to get your thoughts. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, helping me get through these two movies, and I'll see you on the next one.